Elaine, I.
Bill Watson, aye.
Brian Donahoe. Aye.
Okay, now is Keith joining? Jay, can you hear us?
Hold
Okay.
on, I can.
Okay, good. We're just gonna wait for Keith and then we can get into, our questions for you. Yep. So as I understand it, Jay, there's a couple of questions. One is on the connection fee policy that was written years ago on whether or not a bettered property can have multiple connection fees. And then we might as well just start with that one. That seems to be the biggest one for now.
Well, a bettered property, you can charge a connection fee. That is okay. I'm not sure about a second connection fee to someone who's already connected to a system. So,
Okay. I'll refresh you on what the connection fee phrase means. It's, okay, what we have in our rules and regulations, this is something we proposed probably 10, 15 years ago. It was when a bettered property wanted to purchase additional capacity for something, to expand or whatever. In our rules and regulations, we have, the town of Kingston has established a sewer connection fee for the purpose of constructing, reconstructing, repairing, expanding sewer lines, pumping stations, treatment works, and other related facilities as needed. So I don't know if you need to look at this further, or if you're able to.
yeah, but we're not talking about expanding the capacity here.
Right.
We're talking about a connection to a different piece of infrastructure or the rights to utilize a different piece of infrastructure. If it was that's my understanding. I don't have a quarrel that we charge people if we're going to give them more capacity.
Okay. With the language being the purpose of constructing, reconstructing, repairing, expanding sewer lines, it was the original intent was to purchase additional capacity. When the rules and regulations were put in, I think it was probably 2005 or 2019, it was expanded to include all infrastructure, pretty much.
Right. I'm just not sure, and
Maybe it's the terminology of the word connection fee.
oh, right, yeah, I'm just not sure. So we have an existing user that's
Yes,
paid a betterment, paid a connection fee. And now we're expanding our system overall.
yeah,
I'm not sure what, aside from increasing their user fees, you can use under your regulations or under the law to charge them from in some other way to pay for the construction or the debt service related to new infrastructure. Unless there was another betterment for something that they're truly bettered by, which is a different question.
right, because you can't charge it. That was the whole thing. You can't, we all know you can't charge a betterment twice on one property. So
Well, I mean, I don't want to say entirely that you can't, but if you're getting the betterment that you're getting is for getting the sewer capacity. So, over time, if we constructed a new sewer system and we wanted to pay for it, we would still have the ability to do some betterments. We'd have to look at the formula for that. So I don't want to say that someone couldn't be bettered twice for sewer capacity, but if we're doing an expansion of the sewage treatment plant, I have some doubts that we could charge a betterment for that for existing users that haven't really had sewer that long anyway.
Okay, so not talking about the allocation. Okay, leaching fields.
That's
Our
separate.
leaching fields, we've replaced the leaching fields because the prior ones were 25 years old. So that's an infrastructure project. Whether we call it a betterment or connection fee.
Well,
That-
you can't, so that's the point. Those, it's not a whether, those terms have meaning. A betterment is paying, it's kind of like an isolated tax in a way, where you are paying a portion of the construction of infrastructure that betters your property. And it's supposed to be representative of the amount that you are bettered. So generally, we better at the front end of a sewer system because someone is bettered. A connection fee is the physical cost to connect you to that system. It's usually a much smaller amount, but it can be 5 figures, 4 figures, whatever, to put the pipe in your yard. So that's different than paying for the sewer system. That's paying physically to be connected to the sewer system.
I agree with your definition of that particular connection fee. The town, from the house to the street is independent of any of our rules and regulations. Connection fee, which in hindsight is probably the incorrect terminology for this. At the time, it was meant to mimic a betterment, because at the time, the impression was we couldn't better a property twice. So we can call it a special assessment fee, if that gets us to where we need to be. At the end of the day, we would want to assess current sewer customers a fee that they can spread out over 20 or 30 years on their real estate taxes for infrastructure needs. And in this particular case, we're talking leaching fields.
I mean, I would want to know a little bit more on how properties that have already paid a betterment are bettered by this new infrastructure and what the intention was. Again, I don't want to say never in terms of charging a second betterment, but that's what you're doing.
So replacing leaching fields that are at their expiration date. I mean, a betterment lasts for a specific span of time. We have a debt to pay.
I understand that the question here is more discreetly, can we charge a second betterment?
Or special assessment.
Well, it's the same thing.
I agree. So it's the terminology, whatever terminology gets us to where we can do what was the intent of this.
Can I, just let me,
Yeah.
from my perspective, just to kind of clarify that for you, Jay, the pre-existing, the leaching field that has been worked on up till today was only meant to be an interim / temporary one that only handled the first 2 tanks that were built. And the design for the facility that is in the ground now and ready to be operated as soon as we get approval from DEP is for the entire leaching capacity of all 4 tanks, the fully built out system that was designed 25 years ago. So I don't know if that helps, but the one we have now is should not have been in use for as long as it has, but here we are. And so it's a whole new field that's going to service the entire existing users, as well as all the new users that will pay, that we have like 500 or so open capacity slots, if you will, ERUs, that's still open to connect to. So is part of the answer to this is the users that are hooked up now have paid for the treatment plant. Oh, the other important thing is we did not pay for that leaching field. That leaching field was paid for by Tonsberg. The one that's in the ground under his driving range. So there has never been an assessment made on the leaching field to anybody. So now we have a brand new one that will be used by the entire system. And I think that helps to maybe bracket it. You know how Tonsberg's been. We've had suits up to suits, and we had this all lined up for him to work with us, and at the last minute, He didn't want our water, didn't even want it for the irrigation
No,
system. and all that.
I know the history.
So he actually put that leaching field in. CDM did not observe it. He paid for it, and he paid for some of the sewers also in his country club estates. And for that, he got the right to use some of the sewers. But no one actually on the system is paid for that leaching field. So that's, I think, getting back to Elaine, when we trying to think about this in terms of who paid for what and who had a betterment. No one's actually been bettered or paid for that the leaching field we just constructed.
Okay, so that raises a couple things. So again, I'm a little, I want to reserve until I know more whether or not the property owners you want to pay a betterment for some additional sewer infrastructure when they've already paid one betterment. If I need to know a little bit more to assess that. Second, I think that if some people have already paid a betterment and this leaching field would be for them, plus would be for new users altogether, I think that creates some difficulty. It's not irremediable, some difficulty in developing a formula because the share of the costs would generally, I think, would be higher for those that are getting new infrastructure altogether and sewer altogether versus those that are just getting improved infrastructure. And I don't know if there's been any thought on that. Usually we involve our engineers in that a little bit, but
It has, we're charging a different EIU rate for those who aren't already taking advantage of the system. That's the $26,000.
But still, that's still flexible. That's a number we're looking at, but that didn't include this discussion as
Right.
well as we should. But for your point, my personal feeling is anyone who's already paid a betterment is gonna go nuts if they have to pay something else. Okay, so start with that.
Yeah,
Okay. Because I have 3 of them at least in this room.
right.
I don't have to go very far to ask the question. So that's one piece. The other is, I mean, to complicate this a little bit, is that we've talked about the 1/3, 2/3, which is another question on this fairness piece. Okay. But just to put that on the table. So if you come back to the question that you raised, we'd have to make it, everything we did is a standard formula using ERUs, equivalent residential units.
right, but
That's
my
the-
point is that may not apply equally to different users
Right.
who are situated differently.
So we'd have to come up with that, what I was going with this is we have to come up with some kind of a standard unit under the rules in the law that would address what you just said. Come up with a different kind of a,
If I may, the only fair way to do this is to spread it out over the users. If you use a lot, you pay extra. If you don't use a lot, instead of hitting every single resident with a betterment fee, you're gonna have to raise the user fee to cover this cost.
Then we'd have to restructure our user fees by usage and not.
It is by
Like a
usage.
tiered
Yeah.
usage.
Yeah. I mean, it is by usage. You have an old lady living in a house and she's using 50 gallons a day. And you got an apartment complex that's using, three-bedroom unit, using 400 gallons a day. Unfortunately, the 400 gallons a day, those are the people that should be paying. I mean, everybody should be paying. That's the only way to
Right.
spread it out evenly and fairly is to look at another rate increase. This is opposed to that. And then go back and look at, again, what you just brought up is this leaching field was part of the original plan to build it. Originally, back in the day when we built this and we had phase 1 and phase 2. Yeah, there was a 1/3 cut to a 2/3 cut. That still sticks with, I think, this project, that the leaching field upgrade is still part of phase 1 and phase 2.
Right, the plan expansion is being paid by the user fees. That was our last rating.
Well, the plan expansion is getting paid for by the betterment fee, the
And
future betterment fees, and the ones that we just sold.
and the fourth tank debt is being paid for by the user, for the increase in the rates.
Right now,
Right now.
yes,
Correct.
yes.
So yes, so the leaching fields are, can we better them or not for the leaching fields? And I think that's the first question. And then the second question would be, what does that amount dictate to? Which is another discussion that's not gonna be resolved tonight on.
Hmm.
So, because right now our outstanding debt that we have to make up for is the leaching fields, which is about $400,000 a year for 20 years. So,
I mean, I know that there's a shortfall on the debt service here. I mean, in terms of that we're trying to figure out a way to get this taken care of. I just want to make sure that whatever we do, it's legal. And I'm
agreed.
a little wary about using certain instruments that don't apply to this. I'm going to speak to my crew about experience about a second betterment. They're not going to be popular as a second betterment, but I'm assuming increased fees are not going to be popular either if you have to go that route. We just can't just charge a fee though for another connection. I don't think that is legal. So,
Okay, can we charge a fee for a special assessment?
well, that's a betterment.
Right, so that's the question.
I think it's possible, but I'd want to know more about the improvement and how it betters people that are already connected.
Well, the fact that there'd be no leaching fields. We're replacing leaching fields. We're retiring the original leaching fields that, like to Brian's point, that nobody paid for because of Tonsberg. They're over 25 years old.
Yeah,
So-
I think again, the issue is going to be what are you charging people? There's going to be two classes of betterments here, it strikes me, and that's going to have to be if we can do it. And
Well, that's it. Should we find out if it can be done first and then we can spend some time on a tiered approach?
yeah, I mean, yes, but we're going to have to figure out financially how you're going to break up the ERUs. So someone is only going to get charged a partial ERU if this is just an improvement to their infrastructure versus someone who's getting sewer infrastructure for the first time as a benefit of this expansion.
Well, we have no guarantee today that those future people are gonna be there. So typically, it's the project debt divided by users, known users. At least for the leaching field. Dave, do you want to jump in?
If I could just add something to this discussion, couple different thoughts. One is as far as being bettered, I would think by having a leaching field that allows these people another 30 years or 20 years of discharge to a leaching field does better their property as opposed to if the existing one is at the end of its life and it died off, it's non-existent anymore. It's almost like replacing a roof or something that you're extending their access to our sewer system for another 20 plus years. Would that fall into the category of being better?
Yeah, I mean, betterments are just what they sound to be. I mean, it's not really, the formulas are can be tricky, but you're supposed to be charged in the manner that you were bettered. So we have to assess whether or not these folks are actually bettered by this. If they are, then it's possible, but I don't think it's like a full ERU because they've already paid for the privilege, or not the privilege, that's the wrong term, but paid for the receipt. Their property has been bettered by the receipt of pipes in the ground and other sewage treatment stuff. So charging them for a replacement of just part of the system is I think is going to be a little bit tricky. I don't think it's impossible. but it's gonna
So-
be pretty nuanced, and I still have to, I'm gonna do some research internally. It's not gonna be popular with those people, I can tell you that.
Well, raising rates to cover a $450,000 debt every year isn't gonna be popular either, so.
No, but at least rates are spread across a larger number of people.
No, they'd be the same group of people.
But
We have the
the
same
tiers
pool of
change.
people.
Depending upon the user.
Not if we got new people hooked up, which is the goal.
So this is the second part of my point. If we were to go down the route, let's say this does meet all the standards of being, say, for lack of a better word, better. If you establish a 20-year path that you take that number and say, whatever, say it's $200 a year betterment fee. Just throwing out a number. If all of a sudden, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the road, we have people starting to add capacity and add betterments under their original 22 or 26,000 number. You don't have a method necessarily to decrease that betterment fee, right? That would be locked in for that 20-year period.
You'd have a lien on the property.
20 years. So say that third and fourth tank fill in that span of the next 10 years. What do you do? Would you then decrease rates to offset that? Because now you have
Right.
the betterment fee plus all these additional users, plus all the betterments that came in from the new users.
Any betterment that's assessed, that's left at the end of the day goes into our operation and maintenance fund. But we're not even close to that. We're looking at 2057 is the end of this payment thing. We have about, I mean, I disagree a little bit. We have to, everything on this project has been looking forward, anticipating revenue from people hooking up. It hasn't changed. We had to put those 2 tanks on to hook more people up to get the capacity to keep going. So we're always looking ahead. And you go back to the capacity we have a unique circumstance where we have a 1 million gallon discharge permit with a 700,000 gallon a day plant. So we can hit that 700,000 gallon a capacity, and we have right now about 250,000 gallons based on the flow we have today of capacity. And if you take those numbers and add the 26,000, we got like $18 million anticipated coming in just on that. And then, I mean, so I think the calculus of this isn't as simple as we're kind of looking at it. And we also have, with what Kathleen was able to show, just not to divert, but we do have money in the bank on that betterment from the mall. So we haven't talked about that, but this, when you start putting all these anticipated revenues and in the bank revenues, and if we have more capacity and more people hooked up, our rates that we just established bring in more money. So it's all these things tie together. The more people we have hooked up, the more money we have to give to Dave to run the plant and not have to raise the fees. And the more money we have coming in, we have $26,000 per, or maybe it may be 30,000. I mean, I don't know. We've said 26, but it might be 30. You know, when you think about 22, and that was set at 20 years ago, the inflation factor of that isn't a big number, really. So I mean, there's a lot of different pieces. So.
Good.
The thing I'm concerned about, so I'm looking at the statute right now. And I have to do some research. Section 1D of Chapter 83 says, notwithstanding the provisions of Chapter 80 and 83 to the contrary, a municipality acting under Section 1A may make assessments upon owners of land abutting a private or public way in which a common sewer has been laid only at the time of actual connection to the common sewer. So I have to do some actual research to find out if a second betterment can be done at all.
Jay, just, I guess from my point of view, if we can find a way to do this, I've got no issue with it. I just want to make sure we're doing it right. I mean, the question I think comes down to, we have existing users. that have been ultimately discharging to a leaching field for the past 20 or so years. It needs to be replaced. The funding was approved. The leaching field was constructed, and it became operational earlier I'm sorry, in 2024. The challenge is the leaching field was built larger than the existing one because we now have 4 tanks rather than just 2. So it was sized to be able to support the expansion of the transfer station of the sewer plant. So that there's, with the understanding and expectation that there was going to be new connections to water, which meant new connections to sewer, betterments would be assessed, and the leaching field would be paid off as part of the betterments from new connections. Those new connections have not occurred because, as you know, there's a water moratorium. So the challenge for the sewer department is they have debt to service the plant expansion and the leaching fields, and the anticipated revenue they expected to be able to pay for the leaching field debt isn't coming to fruition because there's no new connections. So when we spoke 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think you're saying something very similar tonight that you said then, which there may be an opportunity to charge a lesser betterment, so to speak, amount on the existing users that have been paying their betterment for the original plant construction, but not as much as a new user that's coming on board and being connecting to the sewer operations. And again, connection fee, betterment fee, special assessment, I think they're all the same. They're all those terms in this particular situation are for the same purpose, even though there's I think 2 or 3 separate purposes for them typically. So the sewer commission is looking to fund to support the payment of the leaching fields.
And these leaching fields hasn't been built yet?
It has, so
No,
it
they'll
was,
be operational in a minute.
They're operational 2 months ago, but we haven't got approval from DEP yet. So they were any day.
and they were built for 2 reasons, I think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. They were built, A, to rest the original one because it was 25 years old, so it could be used as a backup, and B, with the construction of tanks, the expansion of the sewer department for tanks 3 and 4, the leaching fields that have been here for the past 20 years will not support all of the discharge from a fully operational plant, meaning having all 4 tanks either completely filled or nearly filled.
That's correct, but even without adding the new tanks, we still would have need to build.
I
the
agree,
leaching field.
but it may not have been as big.
Just to clarify, the fields we put in and just built were always meant to be the final permanent fields for the entire plant forever.
So these will never need to be rested.
Never, it's big enough so they rest within themselves. You can
Okay.
move flow around so that they will last forever, 90 years. The ones that were put in were not. They were meant to be a temporary 10-year to 12-year only use, and they ended up running a lot longer, and they're at the verge of failing, at the edge of failing.
So the new information I heard tonight, frankly, was that the town didn't pay for the existing leaching field. So that's new to me, Jay. So I guess, coincidentally, the existing users have never paid a betterment fee for any portion of the construction of a leaching field. However, the existing customers have ultimately pumped effluent into that leaching field for the better part of 20 years.
Right.
And now we built a new one, as was mentioned by Brian, to address the one that was supposed to be temporary. And again, to some extent, was sized to a point to be able to support all 4 tanks.
The one that's built is definitely was designed
So,
for 4 tanks.
So I think
Actually,
that,
for more than 4 tanks, I'm just making, it was
thank you.
actually more than 4 tanks. 1,000,000 gallons versus 700,000.
Got it.
I'm
Thank you.
told again, we have to be out of here at 5:30 tonight, so Jay, do we just leave this with you and then whatever you
Yeah,
come
I'm
back
gonna
with?
I'm gonna research it. I'm a little concerned, and I've just been sorry to not be looking at this screen. I'm a little concerned about, and I'm gonna have someone in the firm do the research on section 1D. But
Yeah, whatever direction we need to go, we need to.
right, I'm not gonna, I just don't want to tell you you can do a second assessment on someone for new infrastructure unless I'm sure of it.
Okay, that's
It
fine.
sounds reasonable that you could for new infrastructure, especially if you were replacing 100-year-old infrastructure, but I can't sit here and tell you that that is the case because of this particular section.
Okay, that's fair enough. Should, you sent him the Trammell Crow agreement?
We did. Yep.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Jay, we have another, since we have you in a public meeting, we have that Trammell Crow agreement on, the $3.2 million, where we used 1.6 to pay off a ban, and we have another 1.6 being treated as a betterment for future payments. And we believe, that money could be accessed based on the agreement to pay off some debt to get us through maybe the next year or two.
I need to see it. Send it to me.
Sent it to you. So Trish sent it to you yesterday, Jay,
Oh,
yesterday afternoon, along with the link to today's meeting.
Okay.
A3 apartments in the document. There's no.
So that's our next.
This
debt
is
question.
a Trammell Crow money?
Yes, for the
And
apartments
They
at
didn't
the
spend
mall.
it on Justice Thomas. That's interesting. So I make a joke.
I
So,
know. I know.
Oh.
So that's the gist of our question. Right now, it's being treated as a betterment, and we believe that it's available funds.
okay, I'll look at it.
Okay. And
Yeah, that's good. I think there's just when Kathleen had put together and showed us, this was great to find that it has been applied and apparently applied as you, from a typical accounting guidance procedure out through 2057 to show that in the bank accounts, it doesn't pay the whole debt, but it's out there in the future. And what we're saying is we very much would like to pull it back and take the debt off the table that we have this year and next year, and all these other things start to come together, we can deal with them instead of trying to do it by the end of the afternoon. So it feels like. So that's the question.
Okay,
That's good.
okay. So
Anybody else that-
two discrete things. We'll have to do some work on them. And I think there are time limits too. When was the project completion date on the sewer?
Which
which
one?
part?
The one we're trying to do the betterment on?
Oh, the leaching fields? That just happened.
What,
Yeah.
well, the contract completion date is actually, I think, March of this year. We were actually essentially complete in August.
Okay.
The tank
Time
upgrade.
for assessing a betterment. There's under some statutes, it is 6 months. Under sewer, it can be a reasonable time period. So we'll try and get
That's
some
why I
answers.
made the point that DEP has not officially approved and signed off to this day.
Okay.
So it's really not, that helps with the starting date, I think.
Clock's not ticking yet.
As I saw this slip and I said to myself, stop pushing them. Stop pushing them. It's just for this reason.
Okay, all right, we're gonna look at some of this stuff for you all.
Okay, anybody have anything else? Good, Jay, before?
Jay, hi, Kathleen in the back room here. The betterment allocations, we were kind of talking about various pots of money paying for the same debt service. If we have to calculate a new assessment for all current users, would that be against the total cost of the project? Or do you have to set money aside in the anticipation that new users, if they're assessed betterments, would be paying towards that same project as a whole? Because it almost sounds like you're trying to assess and collect more money than you're going to need.
Mhm.
Because you're doing multiple assessments against the same debt service.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, Jay,
Project.
the existing users may have to contribute towards the cost of the replacement of the leaching fields. There was enough capacity in the current plant to provide septic disposal with 2 tanks.
Mhm.
So in my mind, the differentiation is if I'm an existing user that's been on there for 20 years, there may be an opportunity to charge the existing users a betterment just on the cost of the leaching field. New users who would not have been able to connect because the treatment facility was not large enough, to me, would be charged the larger betterment for their portion of the expansion of the leaching field and the construction of the expansion of the sewer facility and the construction of a new leaching field. So to me, that's where the separation can be determined. One is the whole project, and one's just the leaching field.
That's a true
I
statement.
agree with you. I don't know
Okay.
exactly how we do this assessment yet. If the first question I want to answer, Keith, is can we do it?
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you, Jay. I don't know if you can or you can't, but I guess to Kathleen's point, I guess from my point of view, if I got $10 and I've got a certain amount of users that have been on there forever, I take whatever the cost is for the leaching field, take however much, how many customers I'm gonna be able to get, divide the total cost by the total customers that can be serviced, and that number is the betterment assessment. And then for the new users, it's the plant and the leaching fields, and that's the number, doing the same calculation with 2 different cost amounts.
But you
Right,
still have-
the cases say
Have a
that.
short
Can we
Yeah.
see can we see whether or not it can be done?
Yes,
Before we go down this path?
sure.
Because that'll end up being a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But we're on the same page. That's the intent.
So
So leaching fields is one amount and then additional customers would pay another amount.
So the only issue is, and again, I know we gotta figure it out, right?
Right.
I understand that. You've got because you don't have any new customers or very, very, very few new customers for this new tank or the new tanks, the expansion and the leaching field. There's not much money coming in to offset the cost of the debt. You have very little to no betterments coming in because of that. That's your shortfall.
Right,
You
and
gotta
that's
figure out how to
why
pay for
this
it.
Trammell Crow decision is imperative.
I agree. I just think I'm concerned that if you ever get to the point where you've got too much money, you take the Trammell Crow money and use it for something else. But if you use the 1.6 in the first 2 or 3, 4 years of the debt, then that's gone. And
I don't think we want to do that
I
either.
don't know what you want to do.
So I think for the next year or two, we still have, I looked at it, we bring ourselves back to 2047. That we just take the
Yep.
last 10 years and then we take care of these 2 years, get ourselves in order. I've said this, the words hit me. We're gonna be very quickly we're open for business.
Right,
Sewer compartments open for business. No more restrictions. Come on in, guys.
You are, you just don't, I think that's awesome, right? But who can, I got no good connections for you.
Yeah, we're working on
I don't
that.
have a lot of
We're
them.
working on that.
Okay, fair enough.
One point to this whole discussion too, I believe, is if the current users do pay this additional fee for the leaching fields. And we do get new customers who are paying betterment to tie into the sewer system. And
They're
it
paying a
becomes-
connection fee, that they're paying a connection fee to tie into the sewer, plus a betterment fee for their share of
the leaching
cost.
No, it would be one.
Okay.
That's something, you know, going forward in 20 years, the town's gonna be up against the same thing. So you talk about forward looking, would you then have the new users pay their betterment fee plus the leaching field? So that now that money is set 20 years down the road, and say this leaching
Well,
field.
again, their betterment, the new customers are
Their betterments
gonna
goes up.
pay a betterment, I think, on the entire project, which includes the building and the leaching field.
Well, with the new
Project
customers, we'll
20 years.
get new revenue with.
No, we're bettering
That's
them.
what it means,
Right,
like
right.
that.
Oh,
Having money.
I misunderstood. We're better, the betterment's gonna go up to deal with the original determination of 22,000, but we now have values. I mean, if you go back to what every house in the Nook, when we started this thing, had a value of all practical purposes, zero.
Irrelevant.
You know, but I'm saying
Right now.
the betterment really didn't affect, wasn't based on other betterment type analyses of what we bettered the house. This was on just, that's why we use the ERU,
Well, it was based on the cost that can be used.
but it was based on the ER
I
standard unit.
understand that, the cost to build, the.
And then,
sewer.
but then you backed it in.
Yeah.
Okay, but now here we are with a whole new set of debt that we will
Mhm.
raise the betterment accordingly.
Yeah, you should raise the betterment to support. the
That's what we're
cost
saying,
of-
26,000 for
I
that
think-
new project.
I think Dave's concern was like, you know, when all this betterment money goes away, you're gonna have to start this whole process again, as far as 25 years and another leaching field. But that's.
Yeah, that's,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, that's. different.
That's,
All right.
that'll be.
Yeah.
Let somebody else.
Over 15 years, we're gonna, hopefully, it will be.
That's my
Well, that's it.
grandkids.
Put aside a percentage
That's my grandkids.
every year
Yes.
to meet those goals.
So,
We come up with that percentage.
I agree.
5%, 10%.
so I just have a concern about logistics. If this, betterment does go forward, it would be a great deal of work. And, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
We're coming, there's 5
So-
minutes.
My concern is that in order to kind of get the legal opinion, figure out the calculation, go through the process of documenting it with every single user in the system, getting it proper, getting it put in the tax bills, maybe a very, very short time frame to get it for the July 1 bills.
Well, we've been working, well, Jeannie has been working with Munis.
It's not, because it's assessing that's gonna put this.
No, it
in
isn't.
there.
That's why I want to help you with that.
No, that's.
Munis can-
Assessing
Munis-
has to do it.
Okay, well, then let me say this, we can give you the tools to help you.
Sure.
Because
Okay.
Munis has
Yep.
stated, if they have a spreadsheet with certain
Yeah.
information on it, they can upload it into a batch and do the amortization.
So
schedule.
let's get Jay's, let's
Yeah,
get, let's
yeah,
get
so
Jay's.
I just wanted to.
Okay,
set
Jay, thank you.
Realistic expectations.
All right,
It's gonna
we're
take,
gonna-
it's gonna
we'll
take
do
some
some
time to get
research.
something right.
We'll get back to you. Probably won't be till early next week.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thanks.
Thanks.
sounds good. Bye.
Okay, bye. I'm just saying, Munis has said that once they get the file,
Yeah, well,
I just want to talk to you, Kim.
no, I just, in talking to the assessing department, they had concerns because there was some issues insofar as formatting these types of files
I
and having issues. Because you then have to go back and double check all of the work.
understand.
So I just want to put it out there. There may be an easier thing, but it still requires a great deal of effort on the part of multiple departments, and it's a short.
And
timeframe.
that's what can you give us some deadlines? If these go out on the preliminary bills, which are July 1st, what's the backup? I mean, I'm gonna
Right.
guess the print vendor's gonna want their file no later than June 1st. So when would the file start to be created?
That would have to be something that Maureen Clark and would have to talk to Eunice. And see how quickly you can get all the documentation from all the users.
Okay,
Make
we
sure.
can provide.
And the liens, getting all the liens.
The liens, we
recorded.
handle that as well. We handle preparing the spreadsheet. And we can prepare it in a format that Munis is looking for. Then whoever passes that on up to Eunice, it's a spreadsheet. There'll be testing. We'd certainly have the staff involved in testing, Jeannie and maybe Aaron, I don't know, we'll have the testing of the file. Then it'll go to the print vendor, and then it'll be spot checked, and during that span of time, we will record the liens like we have for the other projects we've done. So the bulk of the work's on wastewater. I just want to make sure that we're not gonna be. So that's how I see it occurring. I can put it in an email and then you can bounce it around and see if I'm missing any steps.
I think what would be helpful at some point is to have the assessing department along with Jeannie, if she wants to be there, just have a conversation, with us to understand. I don't know that assessing has ever uploaded a file from a spreadsheet into the assessing database and have it be ready for billing. So that might be a new process. It's just gonna be learning.
Yeah,
And we can figure out how to do that, so we don't have to key it. That'd be ideal.
right.
So
That's the whole goal.
we'll-
I mean, I understand if it can't happen that way, it's a massive project.
So we'll, what makes some sense is to reach out to Munis, and Jeannie has a contact there that she's been talking to. Trying to talk to the same person, so we're consistent and just try to get everybody with a little bit more understanding of what the expectations are, what, a spreadsheet's a spreadsheet, as long as it's set up the right way. And
Right.
Yeah,
Munis must have some
yeah,
specific,
it's a very specific.
Specification.
They
text
do,
file.
they've
fine.
given it to. they've
so we
given
can,
us the
so we
format.
can create that. That shouldn't be a problem.
There were some concerns, in just talking to Maureen about the process, that there was concerns the way our partial IDs are set up and information is that it would have to be due in very, lots of segments and groupings because of the way the parcel IDs are.
Yeah, we can certainly work with
We'll figure it
Munis
out.
because
Yeah.
the Munis.
Yeah, I just want to set a realistic expectation. I mean, I know we make everything.
So the goal.
There's no magic
we
buttons that
wanna
I
have a-
found yet.
We want to have it on the tax bills in July.
I would,
You would
depending
have
on
to,
the
because there's
other,
not enough.
So we
money.
have to, so we would have to work.
That's why-
Work backwards, which is what you're doing. I'm not arguing with
Yeah,
you. So, it might make sense sooner rather than later to have a conversation between assessing sewer, counting if they want to be there and Munis, and just to understand from our end, what has to be provided to Munis to have them dump it into whatever they have to dump it into.
Okay.
And go from there.
She
Just-
does have
that-
Munis training Tuesday. So she's doing some training.
and they have provided us the file format. They provided her the file format.
yeah,
Just-
it's just getting all the parcel information in that file.
Doesn't it help this whole situation if we take money that's in the betterment, at least just for this year, to make us whole?
If Jay says you can do it.
Yeah.
Nobody can stop you. My concern, and you've shared it, is.
Yeah.
What happens 3 or 4 years from now, potentially, when there still isn't enough betterment fees being
Just-
collected because
So
you're not
we
fully
need some
sold.
of both questions.
That money, in a couple of years is gone and used to. But that would be, if you don't have any other sources of funds, then it'd just be user fees.
The next deadline after July, if we can meet that.
I think you have to, money, cash flow. So we
Would
can,
be the actual bills.
it's 6 months away.
January,
It's 6 months.
We got time.
Because, yeah, which,
If we don't.
Yeah,
I
you
guess,
can't really approve your budget to pay for something if you don't have funding sources.
Well,
worst case, we'll use surplus revenue. We have
Yep.
$411,000 in free cash that was certified this fall that hasn't been allocated yet. Worst case, we can use that.
So let's wait for Jay next week. I don't know what the training's gonna be with Munis, but if it makes sense to have somebody from assessing there, I don't know. Just to get a little flavor of what the training's for.
that'd be good.
Maybe,
More the better.
again, might make the assessing
Yeah.
department feel a little more warm and fuzzy.
Well, I don't think that they're too, they just want to make sure that
I get
it's
it.
realistic.
So
You know,
let's
that.
get everybody who needs to be involved.
We
If
get
this
it,
is
yeah.
the initial training, let's get them all in a room.
Yep.
Set it up, talk about it, see what we
Yeah.
can do and see we move forward.
Yeah.
So if you can figure out when and where the training is and what it's all about, if it makes sense to have somebody from assessing or accounting or someplace else.
Yeah, just because we have to map out. So with the betterment or whatever it's gonna be called, is the intention to take the full cost of the leaching field project and divide it by the 1,653 people users?
No.
We plan on in 4 years to be fully sold out, that
Okay.
fourth tank.
But in the interim, so those betterments will not cover the full debt.
That's right.
No, it will. It's not divided by the number of properties. It's allocated based on EIUs.
But again,
But for
until you
the-
sell them, you don't have, until you sell EIUs, you don't have the funds collected to pay the debt.
Right, but all I'm saying is the cost of the leaching fields is not gonna be divided by 1,600
No.
properties. It's gonna be divided by, depending what Jay says, it's gonna be divided by EIUs. If you have one EIU, you pay X. If you have two, you
But it'd
pay
be,
X.
if I understand what the 1,653 properties are, that's the existing users.
Yes,
So a portion of it's gonna be existing users, and if they have one EIU, it's X, if they have two, it's Y, right?
Right,
On top of the 1,653 users, there's an expectation that there's a certain amount of available capacity. And we're gonna use EIUs, I guess, as the calculator we use.
Right.
Standard
If there's a-
units.
if there's a
Right.
1,000 EIUs left, those new 1,000 users, the new 1,000 buyers of the EIU are gonna pay their share of the leaching field.
and the other half of the expansion.
the full, yeah.
Yes,
And the
yes.
question for that is, what is our actual, this is a question I've been asking Elaine, if she can find, what is our actual debt? Oh, that's a bit, we have now that we have we know what the leaching fields cost, it's 8 million change.
You should have that in your contract, the
Yeah.
contractors.
But I'm looking at what's remaining in the first phase, it's still, and then we know what the second phase is, we know what the leaching fields, but I don't-
The first phase is,
Yeah.
is the expansion of the plant, correct?
no, the first phase is all the sewers that were done in 1999 to
There's not, you don't get any of that back.
No, I'm not getting it back, I wanna know what it is, how much is it, how much is still,
What's left?
how much is the debt, so we can, that whole.
I don't know that you can hit them with that.
No, this is for a different, this is for that betterment that goes forward for anyone who's not hooked up. I want to make sure that the betterment is not 26 if it has to be 30.
I agree with you.
But we don't know that number.
Right.
Okay.
There were
I
grants
understand.
paid and it's very confusing when we look back at that spreadsheet. But all I know is that we are still paying debt through like 2036 or something.
Sure.
And
I'm just not sure the existing user who connected 20 years ago is responsible for some of that debt.
no, they shouldn't be
No.
responsible at all.
All right,
I agree.
I understand. I apologize. I understand.
I'm just trying to make sure that other.
We only got
the new-
5 more
The new
years to pay it
betterment
off.
should
Yeah.
cover that. The new betterment has to cover that plus.
I guess I'm, okay, I understand.
Yeah, we have first phase, phase one, then we have phase two, then we have the plant expansion, and we have the leaching field. So we have 4 separate debt
Right.
projects.
Yeah, and the betterments that are currently in place are paying for phase 1 and 2. There's
Okay.
not a shortfall.
When phase two came in, we expanded the infrastructure, we took on more customers.
Mhm.
Right. So
Yeah,
a new
it's still
user-
a matter
new- So a new user tomorrow shouldn't be paying for any costs of phase 1, phase 2.
This goes back to the plan I'm putting together, which is almost done. There are
You keep saying.
500, so it's just, you'd think this would be easy, but
What, you
it's
got a
not.
full-time job or something?
Well, we got so many people work, it's just, you'd think it'd be simple. There's at least 500 lots that haven't been bettered, they haven't been anything, but they're gonna get bettered, and they're gonna get bettered at a number close to 30 grand.
All right, fair enough.
Or the mall expansion that's coming
And
up.
that's all kinds of things.
All right, we're gonna get out of here so they can more assess.
I wanna, we're gonna,
Thank you. You all set with me?
this is a letter I think is appropriate, this is draft. We haven't talked about it, but it goes to another part of the equation. This is trying to get, just for you to think about. We're gonna talk about it, but it's just appropriate for now, since you're here.
Can I have this?
Yes, you can have that. I have it.
I'm not gonna share it with anybody. This is your story to tell them, not
Right.
mine.
Elaine, we are meeting next Tuesday.
Yeah, it
we'll
sounds
meet
like-
tonight
Yes.
with the second or third.
No, take a motion to adjourn,
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.